So we'll be recording this session and it will be made available to participants after the session. We're asking if you could put your full name and organization in the participant list so we know who is here. And we're asking you to please keep your microphones closed during the session unless you're invited to speak. Questions should be submitted via the chat and may be submitted at any time during the session. If we are unable to answer any questions during the session due to time constraints, we will respond to these questions after the session. So at this point, I am just going to ask the members of the JUICE team to introduce themselves, the persons who are actually on the session at this time. So I'm going to ask Rashini, I know you're here, to start us off, and then the others can just follow.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm not able to share a screen, but I am Rashini Clark Randall, Nature-Based Climate Solutions Specialist on the JUICE project.
Anyone else?
I know Renika is online.
I was just gonna unmute. I'm sure I'm hoping
Morning, this is Donna
Hi.
Patchment Brown.
Oh.
Hi.
Oh.
Thank you.
Hi, Miss Brown. Welcome, welcome. Good morning, everyone. My name is Renika Welcome at Night. I'm the Special Project Officer on the JUICE project. Thank you for attending this session and I hope it is worthwhile. Thank you.
Anyone else?
All right, I am Tika Smith from Christie Code.
Audio now unmuted alert. Zoom meeting with video now stopped alert.
Hi, morning. I'm Conrad Harris from Jamaica Society for the Blind.
Video now started alert.
Morning, I'm Kelly Valerie Ono. I'm supporting the JUICE project as part of the Sustainable Financing Mechanism team.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Elena Jones. I'm from St. Thomas Eastern constituency.
Morning, everyone. Nicole Adamson here, CEO of EFJ. Welcome.
Morning, I am Marsha Ford Bryan from St. Thomas Eastern constituency.
Hi, good morning. I'm Michael Barnett, and I'm from New Horizon Christian Outreach in Spanish Town.
Is there anyone else who would like to introduce themselves? If not, you can just put your information in the chat so we can continue.
Hi, good. I'm so sorry, Joni.
No, go ahead. That's fine.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Stephanie Lumley, and I represent Environmental Solutions Limited.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Stephanie. All right.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ken Youth here, Tampa Consulting.
Welcome, Mr. Here. All right, so we're going to continue with the presentation and we will ask persons to just, if they did not introduce themselves verbally, you could just drop your information in the chat. So we're going to start off with what is the Jamaica Urban Solutions for the Environment project. So it is a 5-year project to help urban communities prepare for, which is to adapt and mitigate climate change. It is funded by Global Affairs Canada, and it is being implemented by the Environmental Foundation of Jamaica. The key benefits that we are seeking to highlight are climate resilience, biodiversity preservation, and cost effectiveness compared to engineered solutions, and gender and social inclusivity. And this is in relation to nature-based solutions. So the project is focused on nature-based solutions, and we have a section that deals with definitions that will come later, so I won't linger on that. And it has 3 components. So the project has 3 components that are focused on a sustainable financing mechanism. So this is to allow us to continue to support implementation of nature-based solutions after the project has come to an end. The second component focuses on policy advocacy, and this also includes our capacity building and awareness raising activities. And the third component is focused on nature-based climate solutions implementation in urban areas. And that is why we're here today. That is what the expression of interest is about and what the grants are for. What do we expect from the project? We want a sustainable financing mechanism that leverages financing for gender responsive and social inclusive nature-based solutions. We want increased integration of nature-based solutions in climate change, gender, and urban development policies and regulations. And we want to have gender responsive and socially inclusive urban nature-based solutions implemented in selected urban areas. So we're going to talk some about the definitions, and the first 2 definitions are nature-based solutions and nature-based climate solutions. And I'm going to play a video for you now. And if there is anything that Rashini wants to add at this point, I will ask her to do that after the video.
Life is full of challenges, but sometimes nature can help. Though probably not with my homework. Nature-based solutions are activities that take care of or restore natural areas and help solve challenges in our communities, like protecting people in cities when there's extreme weather, providing food and clean water, and even helping fight climate change. Flooding from extreme weather can be reduced or even avoided by taking care of and restoring nearby wetlands. Healthy wetlands act like a sponge, allowing them to hold enormous amounts of water. So when lots of water comes, wetlands can absorb a ton of it, helping reduce flooding and keeping people safe. Nature can also help provide good food and clean water. Bringing back natural areas helps increase the number of bees and other pollinators. Pollinators are very important for growing fruits and vegetables, so more pollinators can mean more food. And when natural areas like these are next to rivers and lakes, they help prevent dirt, oil, and other pollutants from being washed into these bodies of water when it rains. This keeps rivers, lakes, and the drinking water they can provide much cleaner. Nature-based solutions also help fight climate change. In fact, some nature-based solutions are designed to do just that. These are called nature-based climate solutions. Nature-based climate solutions restore or protect natural areas, which can capture and store large amounts of carbon from the atmosphere. When natural grasslands are restored, their roots store large amounts of carbon in the ground. And when forests are protected from development, the carbon they stored in their trunks and branches stay there instead of being released. These are just a few of the many ways nature-based solutions are already helping. We depend on nature. And if we take care of it, it will help take care of us. So when you and I support nature-based solutions in our communities and around the world, we are using the power of nature to help keep people fed and safe, protect nature, and fight climate change.
Rashini, is there anything you would want to add at this point?
Yes, just a simple point. So to note is the distinction between generally nature-based solutions and nature-based climate solutions. And how it is expressed is through the design of the project being implemented. So It is good to bear in mind that nature-based climate solutions, such as the creation of pocket parks in the form of green spaces, solutions that target urban flooding and stormwater management. It's good to understand the context of the problem before coming to a conclusion about what solution would fit best. So it's not a one-size-fits-all type of system. So I would invite participants to kind of bear that in mind keenly when thinking about the projects to apply for. Thank you, Joni. That's it. Over to you.
All right, thanks, Rashini. All right, we just want to be clear about what we mean by urban for this project, and we're using this definition that Staten uses, which is a densely populated locality with at least 2,000 inhabitants and a population density of 500 or more persons per square kilometer with advanced socioeconomic infrastructure. So that means that you have health facilities, educational facilities, etc. What do we mean by gender? Socially or culturally determined roles, responsibilities, choices, and expectations of males and females. Climate change impacts us different based on our gender. And so that's also something we want persons to bear in mind as we develop our projects. What do we mean by social inclusion? This means identifying disadvantaged or excluded individuals and groups, taking positive action to reduce limiting factors or barriers in relation to the proposed project, ensuring equity in who is recognized, heard, taken into account, empowered by, and participate and benefit in development efforts. I'm not sure if Carol is online and wants to add anything here, or we can do that as we go through the application.
Good morning. I am online and I will go, let's continue and then I will elaborate further on.
All right, thanks, Carol. What do we mean by marginalized? Marginalized means prevented from participating fully in social, economic, and political life because of a lack of access to rights, resources, and opportunities. Social exclusion in brief terms. And what do we mean by vulnerable? It means that we are susceptible to the impacts of climate change. And the project is focused on marginalized and vulnerable communities and implementing our projects in a gender responsive and socially inclusive manner. So as we go through, I just want everybody to just bear these things in mind. Another key definition that we just want to highlight at this point is also sustainability. So this is the capacity of a project to maintain its operations, impact, and benefits after the grant funding period has ended. And this is something that we will ask for applicants to demonstrate. How are you going to keep the project going once the grant funding from us has been completely used up? All right, so moving on to the request for expressions of interest for grants for nature-based climate solutions. So the total amount that is available per grant is $15 million. This doesn't mean that every project will be a $15 million project. As Rashini had noted earlier, it's important for us to understand what the problem is and what the right response or right solution is for it. And we cost it accordingly. We're doing a 3-step process. For persons who are familiar with the EFJ, would have gone through a process which is just basically an application process, and then we evaluate and a determination is made. But for this process, we are doing things a little differently. So we are at the request for expression of interest stage. And following this stage, we will have a capacity building stage. And then we move on to the full proposals. And I'll talk some more about that in detail a little further on. So we were very clear in our adverts about who can apply. And so I have a list here. So private sector entities, national and local government entities, professional organizations, academic institutions, civil society organizations, non-governmental organizations, community-based organizations, and consortia comprising any of the examples listed above. We have some target parishes, and so the projects that are slated for implementation must be in urban areas in Kingston and St. Andrew, St. Catherine, Clarendon, Westmoreland, Hanover, St. Mary, and St. Thomas. We have 4 themes. They're water and flood management, urban greening and heat reduction, coastal and blue economy, and food systems and urban agriculture. So this is the process. If you follow the arrows, we are at the request for expression of interest stage. This phase goes up until April 27, when this segment will close. Once we have received the expressions of interest, these will be reviewed. And following the review, eligible expressions of interest will be invited for capacity building. And once we have done this capacity building, then these entities will be invited to submit full proposals. After we review the proposals, we will make a submission to our grant management committee for proposals that require additional technical support that's not in-house. We will also have a technical working group to assist with that review. The GMC will also have its technical experts as they see the need. And once the GMC, the Grant Management Committee, has made a determination, they will make their recommendation to the EFJ board. Following that, we'll notify grantees, and then we have orientation sessions. We hope to have a little launch, and then we start dispersing the grants. So there are some dates to note. As I said before, the request for expression of interest closes on the 27th of April at 2026. We have capacity building webinars that will take place between the 11th and 22nd of May. We will have proposal writing workshops between the 26th of May and the 8th of June, and the closing date for the full proposals is June 22. So just some things to consider as you approach the development of your proposals and just getting your concepts and ideas together. The projects must be nature-based climate solutions. If they're not eligible. We do require co-financing, but this can be in kind, but you have to quantify it. The projects must be implementable within 12 months from grant disbursement. And you may be wondering why this is the case. We have to conclude all of our activities by the end of 2027. So we would like projects to be implemented and to be able to do some monitoring and evaluation and have some impact data before we have to wrap up. We have to factor in gender and social inclusion. That's a must. We expect that you will have engaged with the relevant stakeholders and co-designed your projects, and that is not something that you just came up with on your own and is going to impact or affect communities that were not involved in the process. So that's an element that you will have to demonstrate, and it must be sustainable. And we want you to think even from the beginning about monitoring impact. What is it that you want to change? What do you want to improve? How are you going to go about doing this? How are you going to measure it? And so we want you to start thinking about that from the get-go and not at the end. How do you access the application? So you go to our website, efj.org.jm, and there's a section that says call for proposals. And under that, you have access to the application form, the user guide, the budget template, the budget user guide, as well as templates for the letter of intent. If you click on call for proposals, that takes you to the full document that explains what the expressions of interest is all about. It goes into all the detail of what, the themes are. Is someone speaking? It goes into all the details of what the themes are, how much is the maximum for the grant, what are the considerations, what's the process, how you can contact us, and a lot of other information is also included in that document. So I'm just going to go through the application. I have some screenshots on my slides. The application comprises of 10 parts. And I just want to say from the get-go, this is not an application that's going to take 5 minutes to complete. It's going to take you some time, and you will need to have all your documentation together. The form includes explanations and prompts, so you are able to see what is required from each section. And you can also contact us if you have any questions or queries. So what I would suggest is that everybody takes a look at the user guide, have a go through of the application, see what it is that is required, and get all of your information and your documentation together before starting to complete the form. So the first section really just asks about information on the organization. So what's the name of your organization? What kind of organization is it? Meaning, what's your registration type? Are you a private company? And for that one, there's a drop down, and you can select the option that fits your entity. What category do you fall in based on the list that I had presented in terms of eligible entities? When were you registered, if relevant? So if it's based on the category that you would have chosen, the required information will update. So for example, if you're a government entity, then the data formation registration wouldn't apply to you, and so that would not be something that's required. What parish is your organization registered in? Who is the primary contact? And contact information. So then we move on to section 2. And this is where we ask you about the project. Where is the project slated to happen? Which parish? And for this drop-down section, this only includes the eligible parishes. So you won't have be able to select another parish. And we ask for a specific location, whether address or GPS coordinates. And we ask you what kind of area it is. There is a drop down for that, and you are able to select whether it's in a city type area, and there are other options for you to select. Then we ask, what are the challenges that you observe affecting your community? And there are some challenges listed there, including an option that says not sure. And then based on these responses, we go to the next section, and it will automatically select some from this list based on what you had put in previously, but you also have the option of unselecting ones that were selected or adding additional challenges, hazards. And then we ask, how will your project change things? So what are the issues that are affecting you, and how are you going to fix those or improve those based on the project that you want to implement? So you have an example that speaks about flooding, and the solution that is proposed in this example is use of a bioswale. And it speaks about how that impacts on the flooding, reduces it, and the benefits. So there are limitations on what the length of the section is. So it's indicated there. It's a maximum of 300 words. So we are asking you to be as succinct as possible, but we want you to be able to explain in those 300 words how the project will change what is currently happening. And then we ask for the project title. So then we go to section 3, which asks about the nature-based climate solution response. So in this section, you are asked to select your interventions, a primary intervention and a secondary intervention. Nature-based climate solutions are multidimensional, and this is why we ask for these primary interventions as well as secondary interventions. The primary interventions are the on-the-ground physical things that you will install or implement. And so in the primary intervention section, you're asked to select all that apply to your project. And then the secondary interventions focus on the sectors or systems and communities that your project connects to. So does your project also, support disaster risk reduction? Is it impacting food security, for example? And so that is the next section. And there are some boxes here. You will click the box and you will get some options that you can select the relevant ones. So from the primary interventions that you selected, there will be some recommended secondary interventions. And as I said before, you can go ahead and include all the ones that are relevant to your project, even if they're not highlighted as recommended. Then we ask about your outcomes. So what will change because of your project? So for each outcome, we ask you to describe what you're measuring. And there's an example there. It says, example, people protected from flooding. Then we ask where it stands now, meaning what's your baseline, what you expect after 12 months, and how you will measure it. And so there are currently 5 slots. You don't have to use all 5. We recommend that you do at least 3, and you can add more with the add another outcome button if you do have more than the 5. So after the section on the outcomes, there's an adaptation logic statement.
I'm sorry, Joni.
Yes, Carol?
Yes, pardon the interruption. Could you enlarge the screen any?
Not from my side.
Okay.
When Joni finishes, I'll just go through the application with some dummy data, just so they can see it. So.
So following the section on the outcomes, we'll go to the adaptation logic statements. And here you include what your intervention is, what it will produce, what it reduces. So there's an example there which says our constructed wetlands and bioswales. So the interventions will slow stormwater flow velocity by 40% and filter runoff before it reaches the harbor, which is biophysical change, which reduces flash flooding and water contamination for 500 residents in Raytown, which is the climate outcome for the beneficiaries. So in this section, you're asked to explain how your interventions will reduce climate risk. And this is a very key component of the application. And then we ask you to tell us in 300 words, your project narrative. So give us a summary. And then following that, we go to the project description. And in this section, we ask that you include what the problem is that you're solving, what the nature-based approach is that you will be utilizing, what will change after 12 months, and how does this change how things work in your community? So we're asking for a little bit more detail here. You have a maximum of 500 words for this section. And then we come to a section that's focused on beneficiaries and social co-benefits. And this is where we take our gender and social inclusion aspects into consideration. So who is affected when the hazard occurs? Why are they at risk? What can they currently do to protect themselves are some of the questions that are asked. We ask you to select the target groups for your intervention for your project. We have a listing here, and you can just tick the ones that are relevant. And then we ask you to do a breakdown of your beneficiaries. These are estimates. So we know that some of you may not have that information right now, as in accurate information, and you will just have to estimate these numbers. And so apart from putting in the numbers, we also ask you to explain how you came up with the numbers. And then the next section asks about how your project reduces vulnerability. So connect how your intervention will reduce the exposure or vulnerability which you had highlighted before. And there's an example there. And then what is your gender and social inclusion approach? How can you ensure your target groups can participate and benefit from the project? And there are some questions there for you to consider. How will you reach these groups? What barriers might they face? How will your project design address these barriers? And how will you track that benefits reach them? And that's a section to type in what the approach is all about. And then there's some gender considerations. There's a listing, and that's for you to select the ones that apply. Following this, we go to benefit traceability. So your outcome from step 3 would populate here. And we ask you to identify the sector assisting, the target groups that are benefiting. The sector system is a drop down, the target groups you type in, and to explain how they will benefit, what's the intensity, high, medium, low, when will they be realized, short term, medium term, long term. If there's going to be employment or training, then we ask you to estimate how many jobs will be created and how many persons will receive skills training. And also, we ask specifically for data for women. And also persons with disabilities. All right, then we go to the value proposition and sustainability. So as I had said before, sustainability is a key consideration for these projects. We don't want to just have projects that we implement them and come month 12 or month 13, nothing happens after that because the grant has finished, there is no more money. So we expect that you will demonstrate how it is that your project will be able to continue post JUICE grant, how it will be maintained, if it's something that will be maintained and is not a revenue generating project. And so there are 3 value proposition models that are built into the application, which you are asked to select. So is it a revenue generating project? Is it that you have a blended model where there is some revenue generation plus community benefits? And also an option where the benefit is really the value that the project brings and not any revenue generation for those particular projects. So you're asked to select your primary value proposition, and then you are asked to explain how your project creates value. So you would explain based on the value proposition model that you have selected. And then we ask for a post-project sustainability plan, 450 words. So how will your project continue after the grant? Who is going to maintain the physical environment? All of those considerations, and that is inputted in the box below. And then we go to our enablers and scaling mechanisms. So what is your implementation structure? Who is the lead on it? Who is providing technical support? Who are your community partners? Do you have government partners? If so, who? And financial partners, etc. And then we ask, what support does your project need to? Oh, sorry, that one says, what support does your project need or already have? And there's a listing there, and you can check the boxes that are applicable to you. And then we ask about your scaling potential beyond this initial project that JUICE will fund. Is there potential to scale? The answer could be limited or none. And there's a drop down there for you to select the options, whether it has a lot of potential or limited. There's a scale, and the options reflect that, and you select the one that is most appropriate. And if it is that your project is scalable, then we ask about what your approach or strategy to this is. And there's an example there, and there's a guide as to what we're looking for in this section. And then we come to section 7, which is the budget and timelines. So we ask you to put in the total cost of your project, how much you're requesting from JUICE, what's your proposed start date and end dates for the project. If you have other funding sources secured or expected, then there's a section for you to input that information. And as you go along, there are prompts, as I said, and explanations as to what is required. There is a budget template. So if you recall when I showed where you can find the application, in that same section, there is a budget template and also a guide as to how to complete the template. And you will be required to upload this template when we get to that section of the application. And there is a section for the sustainability and maintenance plan, and a section that's not required, but there's an enabling conditions reflection section that asks what are the enabling conditions. Then section 8 is a training needs assessment. So this does not impact our evaluation of your application, but it helps us to tailor the capacity building sessions based on the needs of the respondents. So there is a list here, and this first section is related to the IUC and NBCS criteria, self-assessment, and so you are asked to respond to the questions that are there in the boxes. Then we ask about grant compliance and reporting. So we want to understand what your capacity is for reporting and compliance, because there are reports that grantees will have to complete as a part of the process. Then we go to a section related to NBCS technical knowledge. So there are some competency areas there, and we ask you to, rate your experience, and whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced, or it's not applicable. We also ask about your project management skills, your experience related to climate finance and sustainability, and gender and social inclusion. And then we ask you to prioritize what your capacity building needs are. We ask about your preferred learning formats. You just select the ones that work for you. And then we also ask about accessibility and support needs for persons with disabilities. So if you are hearing impaired and would need sign language interpretation, for example, then we ask that you indicate that so that we can make the appropriate provisions for the sessions. And then we come to the supporting documentation section, which is section 9. And so we ask you to upload a letter of intent. Basically, this is an authorization letter. So there are 2 templates, one for government entities and one for everybody else. And it's basically saying that the person who is submitting the application is authorized to do so. So the head of the organization or the head of the entity or the person who is authorized would complete this, and it is uploaded in this area. So for this section, it has to be a PDF. Then we go to the budget breakdown. So utilizing the template as provided, this is uploaded in this section, whether as an Excel file or as a PDF. We ask for your registration certificate if it's applicable, and what is your organizational capacity in the previous work. So if you have annual reports, information on previous projects, an organizational profile, and work experience. And these boxes here basically just explain what the requirements are for your specific category of entity. And that is the application. And then the last section basically just asks that you confirm that you have provided accurate information, that your organization has the capacity to implement the project within 12 months, that you understand that false information may result in disqualification, that you consent to us storing and processing your data for evaluation purposes and sharing with funding partners, and also committing to participating in the capacity building activities if selected. And we ask the authorized representative to put in their name, their position, the date, and if you have any additional comments or questions. And once you have put in all the information that you're supposed to put in, then you click submit and you will get a message that says that your application has been submitted successfully, and you have the option of printing it or saving it as a PDF. There's a section down there that says start new application. So you may be wondering, can I make more than one application? Yes, you can make more than one application, but we will not be, once we finish the review stage, then you would have to make a determination on which project should go forward if it is that both were considered for the next phase. And that's the presentation. So our contact information is on the screen. If you have any questions after this session, you can email them to grants@afj.org.jm. You can also reach us by telephone at the numbers there, and you can look out for updates and additional information on our social media platforms. So I'm just going to invite the rest of the team if they have any additional information that they would want to share at this point.
Nothing from my
May I-
end, Tony.
Nothing from me.
Yes.
The presentation was quite wholesome.
All right, Carol, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Joni. Good morning, everyone. I'm Carol Narcisse, and I serve you and the project as Gender and Social Inclusion Specialist. I want to just say that, as you've seen from the overview that Joni has done, this is a comprehensive expression of interest form, and the intention is to begin to have you begin to think through the project with a level of rigor and a level of detail that sometimes projects may not have been in the past or in your previous experience, may not have had to go into that kind of rigor. But because we want the project to have be technically sound, as well as respond to the social context, the form encourages your thinking both things through. But we recognize that at this stage, you may or may not already have a fully developed proposal document. And if you have a fully developed proposal document, it may not have included some of the details that you are asked for in the expression of interest form. And so we ask you to respond to the items in the best way you can, recognizing that some of the details, particularly, for example, in the section on gender and social inclusion, that some of the details that we're asking for, you may not yet have, because you may not have yet done the community survey, you may not have yet had a community consultation with the stakeholders in a way that's demographically representative. So your best estimates, your best thoughts on the matter at this stage, bearing in mind that when we do the capacity building, we will strengthen your understanding of the how to get some of the information that you will need to have in the proposal. So how do you go about ascertaining and doing the data gathering for gender and social inclusion, for example? How do you do the analysis that you would need to come up with some of the details that you're being asked for and that we will want to see reflected in the proposal? So we recognize that at this stage, you may not have all the details. We ask you to complete the form as best as you can with what information you currently have. Rest assured that the capacity building stage will help you to deepen your ability to produce a proposal with the level of detail and rigor that the form at this stage is prompting you towards. Thank you, Joni.
Carol.
Yes.
Very important points. Anything else from anybody else?
Joni, I think Telly. Okay, Telly and Nicole. Sorry.
I can't see who, so Telly or Nicole can go ahead.
Let Nicole go ahead first.
Okay, Nicole, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nicole Westhales. I am representing several private sector entities that may have an interest in submitting a proposal. I have not yet looked at the guidelines, so I'm not too sure if this is covered, and I didn't hear it in the presentation. I know the discussion on gender and social inclusion, but given that a number of private sector entities are eligible to apply, how would the project define and assess beneficiaries in those cases? And I'm thinking especially that for the private sector interest, it could generate direct commercial or operational benefits. And so how would those be scored against those that are probably coming from NGOs that are benefiting wider communities?
answer that question?
If I may, Joni,
Go ahead.
thank you for the question. It's an important one. Every project is responding to an issue of concern or a problem or a challenge, or it's being forward thinking and putting in place something that isn't there now that is going to have a positive impact. So it doesn't have to be responding to a problem. It can be proactive in putting in place a solution that improves the circumstances, particularly as they relate to climate change impacts, whether that's heat or flooding or whatever. In the private sector context, every project takes place in a community, whether that's a community where people are living or an institutional or organizational community or a combination of the two. So your private sector entity is a community. In that community are people, people of different ages, different genders, different thoughts, experiences, and those people are going to be impacted by the intervention that you will be implementing. So you are still required to think about those people and to factor them in the planning of what it is you're doing. And you are still required to consult with those people about the project and get their responses and their ideas about how would this impact you. If you're male, you're female, you're an older member of our team, a younger member of our team, a member of the team who has a disability, etc. So taking the people who are in the setting into account and engaging with them is a requirement, whether you are private sector or community-based or whatever, because in every circumstance, there is a social context to what you're going to be doing. And whatever it is that you are putting in place in your company is going to impact your internal stakeholders who differ demographically. And so we would still require that you demonstrate that you have engaged them and that you intend to continue to engage them as the project unfolds and how you will do that. And how the project or what you're going to be implementing, how is it going to impact them positively?
Thanks, Carol. Nicole, does that answer your question? Do you have any follow-up questions?
I understand. I think I'm interpreting something, and it's sufficient for what I wanted to hear, and then I understand that it can be done.
Sorry, Joni, there are some hands in the chat.
Okay, all right. Can you just let me know who they are? I think Telly was next.
No, I wanted to present something, so I prefer to get the questions. I think Sonika Jerry was next, then Marsha Ford and Elena. Sonika?
Okay, Sonika, go ahead.
Hi, morning everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
You sound a bit muffled.
All right, let me disconnect the Bluetooth. Then. Okay, are you hearing me clearly?
Yes, that's much better.
Okay, great. So my question surrounds the types of projects that you're looking to fund. I just want to be very clear what types of projects will be considered, because for my organization, we are not engineers, we are not coastal cleanup folks, we are not plant tree folks. So I just want to know, essentially, I don't want us to be expending effort to submit the documentation and then we are far left field of what you're looking for. So if you could share with me some examples of projects that you're looking to fund, that would help me determine whether we go forward with submitting an expression of interest.
Right, thanks,
Joni,
Sonika.
can I answer that?
Go ahead.
Okay, so what Joni had presented was really focused on nature-based climate solutions. So ultimately, what we're looking for is projects that will address climate change, but use nature as part of the element to do so. So I'm not sure what sector you're in or so on, but it really depends on what it is you're solving for. For example, one of the areas might be urban heat. You know, every year it's hot and it gets hotter and hotter as a result of climate change. So that's something we can observe. And it's something you can also observe in your community, that it could be affecting the elderly or so on. So there are some linkages to how it affects health, okay? And even for comfort, if you're in a business or even in a community, an NGO, it could affect productivity because it's too hot. So at the end of the day, we can't say this is what the project is going to look like, etc. This is why we brought in those broad themes. You have to then identify what is the climate problem, number one, you're trying to solve for, and how is that climate problem affecting the community? So hence why the application form asks these questions to kind of guide you through that process. And then also, what are you observing your community does when climate happens? So that's one section on the climate side. And then we move into the solution, and we start by saying, okay, what is the physical intervention you're going to do, right? Which is nature, obviously going to be nature focused. So think about a green wall, for example, something simple as a green wall. Say we're in Kingston, and because it gets hot, because of all the concrete, we're living in a little bit of a concrete jungle. Perhaps where you are in your community is just extremely hot during the summer, and people get sick, etc. So you want to put in some external type of green walls with some designs, etc. And in that you might have, you know, vertical systems you put in with plants and flowers and so on. That has a cooling effect. That's an example. So then you need to identify, okay, what is my solution? What nature-based solution am I going to use to address this heat? Yeah. And in doing so, how is it going to then impact the people? So Carol very clearly and very beautifully articulated the whole issue of the impact on people, on life, and their livelihoods as well. So you could think of it from that lens. So what Joni had indicated, a nature-based solution is multifaceted because it looks at the climate issue, the problem, how you're solving the problem through nature. What is that solution connected to? Is it a sector it's connected to, or is it a particular system that it's connected to? And how is it fixing the system, right? So those are the changes we want to see. And lastly, very importantly, as Carol said, for who? For which community? And how are you improving their lives through the system? And then lastly, whatever your solution is, unlike a project where the money comes in and it ended, you have to think long term. How is it going to be sustained? And so that's why there are questions about the model, whether you're going to have revenue, some revenue, or no revenue. But even if you don't have no revenue, you must at least have a plan. You know, those plants, someone needs to water them. What is the mechanism you're doing that? Who is going to pay for that? Is it government? Do you have a relationship with government? So that is essentially what we want, is innovative projects, but projects that solve a problem in the long term. So Sonika, I'm not really sure what sector you're in. Maybe if you can share a little bit. There are probably a number of ideas that could come out of that. But what we have done is, at least on the budget side, we have three different examples of some projects that you could probably look at and how their budgets are structured. But every entity here has got a different focus and might have a different type of program or project. But just say that the application form helps guide you through aspects that might be more relevant to your context. I hope this answers your question, Sonika.
Very, very clearly. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Kelly. Who is the next person?
We had Marsha Ford Bryan.
Okay. Marsha, you can go ahead.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It is, in fact, a very comprehensive presentation, very rigorous application. And so I just want to ask one question because I'm a big picture thinking of a person. I am from St. Thomas, representing St. Thomas Eastern. And I remember Miss Narcisse. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Miss Narcisse.
You are.
Okay,
well
great.
done.
You spoke about the project being a response to a challenge or a problem, or the project can be a forward-thinking project. And I am here thinking of a project that will merge both. And I'm wondering if that could be a part of what we are thinking here. It may start off as a project in response to a direct climate issue or challenge, and then thereafter, once that is taken care of, I am seeing it blossoming into a forward-thinking operation that can now generate revenue, but it never started out as a revenue-generating project in the first place. So I am seeing it taking on a merger effect, not being isolated. Can a project of that nature work, or it has to be condensed within it being a response to a challenge or a forward-thinking type of a project?
Kelly, you want to respond?
Yeah, I can respond real quick, and I know Carol might want us to respond. So
Yeah, just to say it's all of the above, Marsha. It
it's
can
all
be
of
all
the
of the
above.
above.
It's all of
Okay.
It is multifaceted, so it is
Yes.
all of the above. We are starting with the challenge, which is, climate and maybe other environmental challenges. We start with the challenge, how we address the challenge. But in addressing the challenge, remember your intervention connects to a
Okay.
sector, it connects to systems, it connects to people. So
Okay.
in that context, you can say, and even if it's not going to, obviously we know some of the projects might not necessarily be generating revenue now, but
Right.
we have a potential for building out the model in order to do so. So this way, EFJ's grant becomes a bit catalytic in order to get you to that, stage where it can generate revenue. So even if you look at the form, it doesn't say is it generating revenue now. It's does it have potential?
Okay.
Does it potential for full revenue, or is it
Right.
partial and partial community? So as I said, imagine and bring all these parts together so it is all of the above.
Thank you
Carol?
so much. Appreciate it.
Anybody else?
Yes, good
Alina?
morning. Yes,
Go ahead.
good morning. Elena Jones, representing Eastern St. Thomas. I have two questions. Would the river training or riverbank stabilization project be considered eligible under the nature-based climate solution theme if they primarily use ecosystem-based approaches such as vegetation, stabilization, watershed restoration, and floodplain management? Could this be part of one of the projects? And to what extent are hybrid approaches combining nature-based solutions with limited structural or engineering intervention acceptable within this call, and how is that balance evaluated? Thanks.
Rashini, you want to take that question?
Yes. So Elena, I think in your case, what you need to be mindful of is the urban context. If it is that the community in which the project is being implemented is within an urban context, depending on the scale of the solution, it may be something you can apply for.
Okay.
For projects that are concerned with, you have there in the chat, watershed restoration, floodplain
Yes.
management, and riverbank retraining. Those tend to be projects that are fairly on the more expensive side. So I would also add that looking for or already having co-financing would be of benefit to an application of that type.
Okay.
I don't know if Telly wants to add to that.
Yeah, also to add to that, you have to also think about, does it require any government permitting and so on? If it really does, you know, that process takes long, and the project's timeline is 12 months, no more than 12 months. So those are things you might want to consider. So yeah, the urban context is very important. If it is within an urban context, then yes, it could be considered, as long as you're also ensuring you add additional elements and you really address how then it connects to really helping improve the lives of community, etc. And you have identified a sustainability model. As I said before, we recognize not all models are going to be revenue generating. So maybe it is more of a, what I would call a public good, a community that has community benefits. But in that context, what you have to be clear about is how is the maintenance going to be done long term, and what is that long term plan for maintenance beyond what the project funds can sustain. And we're not talking about 6 months. We're really talking about long term. Nature-based solutions are solutions that should last and should be continuous. So you have to start thinking about that long-term approach. What was the second question you said?
To what extent are hybrid approaches combining nature-based solutions with limited structural and engineering interventions acceptable within this call, and how is that balance evaluated?
Okay, so you would just have to identify, at the end of the day, you said the keyword is limited. So if it is necessary and you have piping and so on that need to be utilized in order to implement it, then it can be considered. But the evaluation, at the end of the day, the evaluation also has a component later down when we're doing the actual RFP to really do site visits and look and to ensure that it is not majorly green infrastructure here. It is really the nature-based solution, and you're adding in, it's necessary to add in those fittings and so on. So it will be considered.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Join
Thanks,
1
everyone.
minute. I just wanted to add to what Telly had stated regarding the the riparian buffer project that Ms. Jones mentioned. With a project of that, from a medium to large scale project of that nature, it would also require hefty risk analysis and a risk mitigative strategy, for being that it would impact community members and the ecological ecosystems that are around. So an extensive risk analysis would be necessary for projects of that nature as well.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Ronika. Thanks, Telly. Thanks, Rashini. And I think this question has brought out a point for us to also consider for your projects, not just for projects like riparian buffers or river training type activities, but in general, does your project require approvals from any government entities, to take those into consideration and with the timeline in mind. So that's another key consideration that we hadn't highlighted, but please take that into account because we do know that some of these processes can be very lengthy and would take up quite a bit of the implementation time. Any other questions?
There is a Mr. Simpson and some questions in the chat.
Okay, I didn't hear the first thing you said.
Rayon Simpson, Principal, Belmont Academy in Westmoreland.
Hi, Mr. Simpson.
Hello, which essentially was the ground zero for Hurricane Melissa. So I've been listening to the conversation and excellent presentation, by the way. I loved it. We at Belmont, since the passage of the hurricane, we have embarked on a massive solar project because the Hurricane Melissa didn't just teach us the lesson and made it clear that we needed to have gone that direction, but we have had in the last 2 years 4 massive weather-related events that would have caused us to think twice, or maybe more than twice. So we had Beryl, we had Raphael, we had another freak storm that took the life of about 2 students in the White House area in recent times, and then of course we had Melissa. So we had been making our school improvement planning and adjusting that as we go to lead us in a direction where sustainable energy would be concerned and teaching our students how we can improve our carbon footprint and all of those kind of things. So since the hurricane, we through some of our own savings and the goodwill of Jamaican citizens, we have embarked on a solar project that will essentially make us independent of the JPS grid in a little while. And we are very proud of that project. And so we've been thinking about how we could impact the community because we have 1,100 students and most of them are from the community. We've been thinking about how we can impact the community in that regard. And so having listened to this presentation, I'm thinking that this may be the project because it is clear that solar energy and renewable energy is a direction to go and that would fit within your template well. But how is it now that I think we can impact the community? Perhaps we could identify, let's say 25, 30 residents within the community who either did not have regularized electricity or because of the passage of the hurricane were so devastated that they would require some amount of help. And through the experience of our project at school, we have found other less cost-effective measures that can help us to implement solar projects that wouldn't go the route of the usual expense. For example, go-karts that are used on the hotel circuit. The batteries that are used in those carts can be used to power solar projects, and they are way cheaper than the expensive ones. Of course, they have a shorter shelf life, between 3 and 5 years, while the solar batteries would typically have up to 15 years. But if one can get residents started and they can accrue savings for up to 5 years by using a different method, then I think that could enable a project with $15 million to impact a wider cross-section of people than it normally would. And so I'm thinking of how we can get the students who assisted in implementing our project, students and teachers, to go out into the communities and install these startup kits for residents. I've always felt that you shouldn't be in the community as educational institution if the community is not also in the school. And through my travels, I've seen where educational institutions are deeply embedded and integrated in the lives of the community, but this is not quite the same in Jamaica. And on this side of the island, I would love to create a change in that regard. So against that background, just wanted to throw this little synopsis to you to see if this is something that one would want to consider and if it is in keeping with your philosophies and the modus operandi of this project.
Thanks, Mr. Simpson. I'll let Rashini respond to that, and if any other member of the team wants to add anything, but I just want to say we are happy that you are able to join us today. We know that things are not back to normal in any way, shape, or form in much of the West. And so I just want to express to you that, going forward, if it is that you do intend to submit an application, we are here to support, and that you can reach out to us. But I'll let Rashini respond first, and if any other member of the team wants to respond to that specific comment idea.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Simpson. I just want to first kind of clarify from what I'm getting, you're describing a solar-based project. Can you confirm?
Yes, a solar-based project, yes.
So that's where I would first have to clarify. So basically, the projects that we are looking to fund are nature-based, meaning that we're using the technology of nature to solve climate-related issues. So, for example, if you're lessening heat, or if you're thinking about it like you're reducing household energy costs by creating more green spaces, which would then create a carbon sink in the localized environment, then that is the kind of thinking that and the kind of project would be able to fund. But something that's infrastructure intensive in the form of like a solar project, that within itself as the core of the project is not really where we're looking to, the direction we're heading in. For example, again, if you had a project where you have, for example, an urban farm and solar energy was being used to run or operate a pump, that's directly beneficial to the operation of the farm, then that is also a component-based implementation of the solar that, it being a part of that wider project, that is something we could look at. But as you've described the project, I think what you would need to do is to kind of look at the ways to more make it a nature-based climate solutions related project, in first identifying what the issue is and how nature can be core to solving the problem.
Well, you use the word nature about 3 times. I'm wondering if sun is not a part of the nature, because it's the sun that is used to propel the
What she means is, while we know solar is part of nature, it's just that in the implementation of a solar project, it's a lot of, infrastructure elements, like it's core infrastructure. You have to get the panels, But the example she gave is fantastic when you're looking at a farm, and the farm has a lot of nature components. And if you want to incorporate, because of course electricity is expensive, you need it as part of the resilience piece you're saying, but it's part of it as agrovoltaics. There's still a big part of it that is nature-based, and then you have this component that has the panel. But holistically, we're dealing with a nature-based solution that does have this component. Because to capture the solar, you need a lot of equipment. So if it is only solar focused, it might not pass as a nature-based. But if you are incorporating it with some natural physical intervention, and then it's a component, then it can be considered. That's why she emphasized nature 3 times.
If I may also,
Yes.
Mr. Simpson, I just want to join Joni in just really saying to you that Westmoreland is in our thoughts, as is St. Elizabeth and all the other parishes, and actively in our thoughts. And so, although solar installation as a standalone project would not be in this call, the Environmental Foundation of Jamaica is not just the JU's project. It supports the foundation writ large, can be approached outside of this call. I don't know if our CEO, Mrs. Adamson, is online. And so if she is, I would defer to her. But there is a post-Melissa grant fund that EFJ has and has been providing some support. And I don't know the ins and outs of it, but it may be that although not for this call, it does not mean that there may not be other opportunities and mechanisms by which your school can approach the Environmental Foundation, the corporate entity, to explore the prospects for support.
Yes, thank you. Just for clarity though, it was a community-based project and not necessarily a school-based, because the school has already implemented a massive solar project. We were seeking to see how, to create an impact, how we could reach up to 50 household residents in one go by virtue of the savings that we were able to make with the model that we approached. So that was the thinking. But thank you so very much for your insights. I've been listening from the meeting started, and I will continue to do so until it is ended.
I want to encourage you, Mr. Simpson, to contact EFJ and to speak to our CEO or our project director, who can better advise you of any other potential opportunities for support in the organization.
Thanks everybody for their inputs. I don't want to butcher your name, but Miss Green, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, that is your Green. Thank you so much. This has been an excellent presentation, and I'm really excited about the opportunity here with two colleagues, Michael Barnett and Nigel Moore. We're interested, at least in part, in the urban agriculture and food security component. My question is about risks. We will need to outline some of the risks, and I know that predial larceny is an island-wide risk whenever you're growing your own food. I'm wondering if the EFJ has anything in place in terms of support when you talk about, for example, capacity building in the next phase. Should we move forward, or whether you would be able to facilitate connections with RADA and some of the specific initiatives that are that have come on board with respect to training people, educating people to prevent and mitigate predial larceny, so that we can, at this early stage, include it as one of the risks and the fact that we want to be proactive in mitigating it. Oh, and also, I put a whole bunch of questions in the chat, so I'm hoping that sometime afterwards they will be addressed. Thank you.
Sure. So we don't have anything currently that is focused on supporting in that fashion, but we can make connections with RADA, and we can connect you to RADA so that you can explore with them, so that you can better explain in your application how we would be able to mitigate the risk, taking those considerations and factors into account. Marsha, is that a... Oh, sorry.
Just to answer her question in the chat, She asked, do you have specific definition guidance on consortium applications and what is internally? So based on the list of entities that are eligible, the consortium could be part of that listing. So you're either a private sector entity, you're either government, or you're a community-based organization or NGO. But whoever is going to be the lead applicant is going to identify that they're the lead applicant and put in the application, but indicate you're applying as a consortium. There is a selection for consortia in there.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, thanks, Jelly. So I'm going to come to the chat. I just wanted to ask what Marsha had her hand up. Okay, it's not there, so I guess that was an old hand. So there was a question about whether it's possible to apply for more than one location for the project. Yes, you can make more than one application at this stage, and we will do the evaluations. But going forward, we would, if both go past the EOI stage, then we would ask you to make a decision at the point of submitting the full proposals on which one you want to carry forward. So you go through the capacity building and then you would make a decision on which one. But it is okay for you to submit for up to 2. And the next question that you had was, can the project be a pilot project to prove a model that can then be implemented in more locations going forward? And I think we kind of answered that question when the participants had asked about it's going to be a community benefit initially and then revenue generating going forward. So yes, that response would also apply, that yes, what you're putting in place could be considered a quote-unquote pilot. And then once you have proved the model, then you can implement in more locations. I'm not sure if this question meant that you wanted all of this to be encompassed in your application. So I don't know if you want to clarify that, Ms. Green, because that would take into consideration the timeline.
Just to also add, Joni, to that question, that the expression of interest form does ask about scalability.
Right.
And so when you get to that segment, the person who posed the question, when you get to that section, you would have to demonstrate that it's potentially scalable, and what would take you from pilot to scale if that were the case, because it ties back to the issue of sustainability. We all know of pilots that don't go any further beyond the pilot stage, primarily because many times we have not thought about how it will go beyond the pilot. And so this process actually will force you to think that through.
Yes, so you've answered my questions very much, and I had posed that question before you got to that section of the application. So my apologies for jumping the gun.
That's okay, no problem. So the next question, this is for you, Telly. Can we provide an offline version of the form?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah,
thank you.
we provide the questions, so you can. It's just that the form has some logic to it, so still you would need to, and you also have the user guide. So the user guide actually walks you through the entire form, but we can provide you the questions as well. So that's something I'll get to the team to put on the website.
All right, thank you. And about your question about the community partners, whether they need to be confirmed and signatories at this stage. So we don't necessarily need signed documentation to say these persons are partners, But what we ask for that section is that you put in who you have identified and who are committed to supporting the project in that section. But when we come to the full proposal, we would get into more details on that. But as Carl had mentioned, we know that we are different types of entities with different capacities. And so we may not have every single thing that is being asked from the forum, and some things are not mandatory. So we are going to ask you at this stage to include what you can. And there is a section at the very end for comments or any additional thing you want to add. So if there is no option in the section to provide some additional information that you think is relevant for us to know in terms of where you are, then you can put it in that section. And we answered the question about the hybrid approaches from Elena.
I just wanted to quickly just show them what the end user guide looks like. It's a detailed guide that walks you through. So everything you have in this session and more, it walks you through step by step what you should know, how to use the guide, getting started on the portal. It has features for you to save. So it just goes through similar to what we just did. It goes through on what the banners represent, the fact that you can save your progress, you can review and edit, right? And so on and so forth. So this is a guide for you, and it shows you the same 10 steps that Joni went through, and the wizards and the pro tips, etc., that guide you under each stage. It also talks about the collapsible card. So when you click on it, you open a card, it opens up, you complete it, and then you can close it back. So this way, you're not feeling overwhelmed with like too much information and you don't know where you are in the form, right? So field by field, I think this is what we captured here. So some of the questions are in here as well, but we could be a bit more explicit as well for you. So I hope this answers your question. So it takes you step by step what you need to fill. The climate hazards, right? And here are some climate hazards. And then the questions on coping mechanisms, etc., etc. So this is it. And also when it comes to the budget, the budget also has a guide for you that you can walk through. And we created 3 different examples, worked examples, so that by the time you get to your template, you're able to then better articulate it, and shows you which columns you need to fill out with some practical examples as well. And there's a section where you have to put in, I think it answers the question in terms of what your budget, the budget needs to link to a particular result. And this is a way you can actually link it with some examples. Okay.
All right, thanks, Delhi. So there's a question that is related to budget. So thanks for putting that up for us. So as it relates to recurring or operational costs, so for the costs have to be directly related to the project that you're doing. As I can't be specific in terms of responding to the question about equipment, but if it is a component that is required for you to carry out the intervention, then it can be included in the budget, but everything is on a case-by-case basis. So we would have to look at it within that context to see what is really eligible. But as Telly said, there's a budget template that explains what exactly can be considered for inclusion, and it gives some guidance. So you can utilize that to help you determine what would be eligible and not or not. And as I said, you can reach out to us. With us knowing the specifics, it's hard to give a specific response. But I had put the information on the screen, and so you can reach out to us by email or phone, and we can respond to more detailed or specific queries via those media.
So
And
here's an example. You can see a worked example of this is for a hybrid community farm, and as you can see, this section is the category, and you put in your description and you put in the link result. And we also want to know what the indicators are. If it is you're targeting farmers, in this case, they're targeting youth farmers, how many, so we can quantify them and so on. And of course, the budget must be related to it. So once you fill out what your budget request is and co-financing, it would total it and say what the percentage. One thing that's really important is for your budget, number 8 is administrative costs. Administrative costs cannot go beyond 10%. And if it goes beyond 10%, it will tell you it's a red flag that you have to kind of rework it. So that's all I'm going to say on that.
To the questions about whether the recording and the presentation will be made available, yes, it will. We will share these with you. We also had some sessions that we did prior to the call coming out that really went into a lot more detail on the technical aspects in terms of what NBS is, the sustainability aspects, and so all of that information, we will share that with you as well.
There's a question.
Mr. Henry?
Yeah, Mr. Henry.
Hi, good morning. Thank you as well for the presentation, and extremely comprehensive. So similar to others, the EOI is a lot of work. So I just wanted to ensure that my product or project forms a part of the scope, before we extend a lot of effort in there. So we are doing a farm to table or farm to workplace application, mobile web application, and the objective of it is to bridge the gap between farmers and the persons who are within the corporate work environment, specifically to start here in Jamaica. I wanted to, just within that brief overview, I wanted to understand if that project or product could form a part of the scope that you're requiring here as well.
Should you want to respond?
Yes, I can respond with the support of Kelly. That sounds like a digital application of NBS of some sort. As I said, as Joni would have expressed, it's hard to determine specifics from a broader context, but it sounds like a digital application of NBS. And I do believe there is room to apply for funding for that expression, right, in the form, Telly?
Yeah, there's room for it. So it will be seen as an enabler. So what I suggest you do, you actually engage into partnerships with the community so that the elements, because you're connecting farm to table, so the farming elements are kind of the natural elements of it. So it will fall under urban agriculture as well as food security. So my suggestion is you work along with the community or a group and enter into a consortium, because your application literally enables that connection. So it does fall under a digital nature-based solution as an enabler component. So you would need to also ensure some of the other elements are addressed as well. So you have an arrangement with some farmers and so on, and in the urban community, and you look at some of the areas they're addressing as well, then you're able to kind of look at it from an economic standpoint. It also links to, as I mentioned, food security. It will link to providing sustainable livelihoods, etc. So those elements are part of the application process, but you just need to make sure it is holistic as a nature-based solution And you are applying the digital aspect, so it is there. Mhm.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Clear.
Thank you for that, everybody. There was another question that I omitted. Sorry about that. There was a question about whether a member of parliament can apply. So individuals are not eligible to apply, so you would have to be one of the entities that's in the list.
Joni, there's a question. Prendergast.
You can go ahead.
Okay, hi, morning. Okay, like my brother before, I wanted to double check to make sure that the project that we're doing is relevant. We're right now building a transitional shelter, a community resilience hub as a housing solution for displaced residents, particularly in Peters.
Not hearing you if you're still talking, Donisha.
The kinds of construction, which would include potentially earth home modeling.
Could you start over? We didn't hear a lot of what you said, I think.
Okay, I'm driving right now. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we're hearing you now.
Okay, great. So just wanted to check that the project that we are working on as well fits within the parameters of the grant. Right now, we, meaning our nonprofit organization, Humanity Over Vanity, we are building a transitional housing solution, which looks like a community resilience hub in response to the displacement that has happened in Petersfield. This place will be the first of its kind in Jamaica, a model that we're hoping can be replicated and scaled across the island, as Jamaica right now presently does not have one permanently built shelter. Now, we are naturally endeavoring to have an organic farm, which has already started, and we started some construction, but now we're looking at earth homes and trying to look at other more earth-friendly and sustainable building practices. Is this something that would fall under the remit of the grant, and how?
Okay, so I'm going to start and then the others can continue. But so we have 4 themes for the applications, and so what you're applying for, whether in whole or in part, would have to fit into one of those themes. So we have flood and water management, we have heat mitigation, we have the blue economy, coastal economy. Gosh, and I forgot the last. So it would have to fit into one of those, food security and urban agriculture, which we were just talking about, yes. So what you're proposing would, first of all, have to fit into one of those things. And then there are supporting aspects that can be considered that, would be required to make your main intervention effective. So I can't say specifically no or yes without having some additional information, but if anybody else on the team wants to provide any guidance or further comments, you can go ahead.
Okay. We'll probably start.
Go ahead, Shini.
Okay, so there are 2 things that jump out. So one is the use of the word construction. The processes involved there is something that we would have to kind of review, and as well the types of materials that are used. But the way that I'm thinking a project like that could be framed is that if you are doing the earth homes and the actual construction of the structures are outside of our scope, every home, every site has a site design element to it. So one, we would want to check that it's within an urban context, that's for sure. But then in terms of the site design components, if it is that a part of building out this property is that you're utilizing permeable pavements, for example, to deal with permeability so that there's no flooding. That's a component that is definitely within the realms of a nature-based climate solution. So while it is not in its entirety the construction of the earth home, the elements of the site design and the design of the community would make certain elements of it qualify, so to speak. So that's how I would try to maybe make that broader project break down into sub-projects that you could get funding for components of it.
Yeah. And just to add to what Rashini is saying, I think it could possibly apply once the home can be a part of that nature-based climate solution. And if it emphasizes the nature-based design as well as the climate resilience. There's a component you mentioned about household and settlement. So we actually do have a question there. 1 second. We actually do have a question there that really addresses that if your project does have that settlement component, yes or no, and to describe it. So you would need to add additional information, but for sure, emphasizing the design of the nature-based climate solution as well as the climate resilience and some of the livelihood settlement components could actually be there. But again, as what Rashini had said, once it's construction, they have to really look. I know mud homes could possibly fly because they're using also the earth, etc. But if you have a lot of green infrastructure component, then gray infrastructure components, then it might not pass. So I guess we encourage you to apply so that the team can actually evaluate and assess, and as much additional information you provide for them to understand whatever designs, etc., would also help the application.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And just enough that has come forward. Just education. I think generally, just like you've said, construction. There are a lot of us who are doing work right now who want to be able to be more environmentally friendly and that kind of a thing, but there are best practices that we may not be familiar with. Is there an element of mentorship that is included in this, or some other kind of skills development around environmental education that could be considered?
You mean for the entities that are getting the grant? There will be, for those grantees, there will be ongoing capacity building, etc. Hence why we asked for the training needs assessment, but it wasn't like fully designed. It really is for support for your intervention. But again, this J-Use is one project. You have the overall EFJ that has many different windows and other projects. So maybe they would take it into advisement and incorporate some capacity building. And also, I believe the project just launched a podcast. And in the podcast, there is some scope to talk on some topics. So maybe I would say get in touch with the project manager and kind of share some of the areas, because we do recognize that a lot of private sector professionals, especially those in construction, architecture, engineering, do want to go into more green engineering and architecture, but may not necessarily have the wherewithal. So maybe through the podcast, they might be able to bring in some select speakers to do that. So I would ask another team member to speak to that. I believe Rashini and Ms. Carol Narcisse are leads on that.
Thanks, Danny. I think the short answer, and greetings, Danisha. Let me just declare a connection to Danisha. So the short answer is the project takes very seriously the need for capacity strengthening, and we're doing that by different means. The podcast being a conversational space where we're elaborating and exploring what we mean by nature-based solutions and different contexts in which they apply and so on, but in a very real-world way. But one of the steps in this call that we've done, one of the steps which you may or may not have heard, is that we are going to be doing a series of workshops looking at different themes. And that's going to happen in fairly short order. And then as you've heard, ongoing thematic sessions will also happen based on what people indicate their knowledge needs are. So there'll be different avenues and possibilities for knowledge sharing. As well, the EFJ website, which is under redevelopment to include a lot of knowledge products that will help you and will help everyone. There'll be various toolkits and guidance notes and other things on the J-Use component of the EFJ website that will be available in pretty short order. Just also to say that one of the things that I'm producing, which people will find helpful, is a gender equality and social inclusion toolkit for project planning. So you can look out for that, or the link to that will be shared as soon as it's up.
Thanks, Carol, for that, and also for allowing me to get a little segue to promote the podcast, which I was gonna do at the end. Marsha, I see your hand up, but since the podcast came up, I just want to invite our participants to have a listen. I have put the link in the chat, and you can find it wherever you listen to your podcasts usually. So, Marsha, your question, which quite possibly maybe our final question.
Yes, just a quick question. You made mention that individuals cannot apply, and I understand that, but I'm speaking specifically to the MP. The MP does not work alone. So can you give me an idea as to how we can incorporate the MP's application and how it might align to the elements of this project? Is it that the MP needs to align with a community association, or is it that we take the project through the governmental entity like SDC, or can you shed some light on that for me?
So you can answer your own question. So yes, the project can be considered, but the application would have to be made by one of those entities that are in the list. So it could be a community-based organization, it could be a government entity. We just need there to have been all the prior consultations for everybody to be aligned with what the purpose of the project is, what the outcomes we're trying to achieve. So you would have to have that stakeholder engagement early on in the process, and then just to clearly articulate who the actors are and what their roles are. So there is a section in the application form that speaks about enablers. So you have the lead applicants and then their supporting entities. So that's a section that you could input that information.
Okay, so we could not apply per se as a constituent. You couldn't?
Well, does the constituency office fall in one of the categories? I'm really not sure.
That's what I want to know.
Can I, Joni? Colleagues, I think you understand what we're about here. And so a constituency office, in our experience, does not always have a good track record of being inclusive of all community members without partisan connection or overtone. And so to the extent that we want to ensure that we mitigate that possible concern, it really ought to be a project that is demonstrably grounded in real community with all of its diversity, and so yeah, typically it would not be an MP or a constituency office.
Okay. I just needed to make that clear because I know based on what you're doing, it has to be grounded in serious background information regarding research and needs assessment. And there is a team that does that. I just wanted to know what the stance are regarding the specific grouping, because where we are working now or aligning ourselves, yes, it's extremely inclusive, and that's what we are working on. But I just don't want to have any gray areas surrounding the entity or the grouping. So thank you so much for being explicit in your response, and that's what I wanted.
It will help if the representatives identify community-based organizations with a track record of including and working across all lines, whether that's political or any other. And yeah, if you have particular expertise that can support the CBO or the NGO, then we would expect that you would give up that freely to the NGO or government agency or other.
All right, thank you so much for that. You cleared up a lot. Appreciate it. Good.
Joni, you're muted.
Thanks, Carol. So I just wanted to say thanks to everybody who remained till the end. It was a long session, so thank you for participating. Thanks for all the questions. I'm just gonna allow the team, if there are any concluding remarks from anybody briefly, and then we will wrap up. I will just post our information in the chat, just in case anybody missed it when it was on the screen. So team, any final comments from anybody?
No, just saying we're looking forward. This is so exciting. And we're looking forward to hearing the further and better particulars from those who will express interest.
Thanks, Carol. Anybody else?
Nothing from my side. Thank you for joining, everyone.
All right, thanks everyone again for participating. And we, as Carol said, we are looking forward to receiving your submissions. And please do reach out to us at any time while you are doing the application with any follow-up questions, or if there's anything that comes to you as soon as this meeting has ended, please reach out to us by telephone or email, and we'll be happy to talk to you or respond. So thanks again, everybody, and enjoy your afternoon.
Is there a specific telephone number that we can get through to you on?
So no, I don't have a direct number, so you just have to call one of those 3 numbers in the chat, and they will transfer the call to me or any other member of the team.
Okay.
All right, thanks everyone.
Just make it clear when you call that you're calling in relation to the JU's project, so they'll know.
Thank you, ladies.